How could an army of the tiniest creatures on earth hold the attention of a king who commanded the winds, the animals, and even the jinn? Want to know about this interesting story? Stay tuned in today's video. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel, Naseeha Studio. Today we will be talking about the story of the ant and King Solomon. King Solomon, known in Arabic as Sulaiman, was a prophet of great wisdom and power, bestowed upon him by Allah. His kingdom was unlike any other in history, where he had command over not only men, but also animals, birds, and even the jinn. With such dominion, Solomon's rule was just and wise, and his fame spread far and wide. One day, as Solomon's army marched through the lands, a remarkable incident occurred, one that would be remembered and retold for centuries. It was the day when the humblest of creatures, an ant, captured the attention of the mightiest king, the gathering of Solomon's army. The sun had just begun its ascent, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, when the great King Solomon prepared to lead his formidable army. It was a sight to behold, one that would be etched into the memory of all who witnessed it. Solomon's army was not just an assembly of men and horses. It was a divine force, commanded by a king whose wisdom and power were unparalleled. As the morning light broke over the horizon, the camp of Solomon's forces came to life. The air buzzed with activity as soldiers polished their armor and weapons, the clinking of metal creating a rhythmic symphony. Horses, their coats gleaming in the early sunlight, were saddled and ready, their breath visible in the cool morning air. The birds, with their keen eyes and sharp beaks, took to the skies, their wings cutting through the air as they awaited their master's commands. Yet, this was no ordinary army. Solomon's forces included not only men and horses, but also creatures of the sky and earth. The birds, loyal to their king, flew in formations, scouting the land ahead, their sharp cries echoing through the skies. These avian scouts served as the king's eyes, relaying information back to him with the precision and speed of a well-oiled machine. In the midst of this bustling preparation stood the jinn, beings of smokeless fire, invisible to the human eye but present nonetheless. These ethereal creatures, bound to the service of Solomon by the will of Allah, moved silently through the camp, carrying out tasks that required their unique abilities. Some jinn worked alongside the soldiers, their strength far surpassing that of any mortal man, while others prepared for tasks that only they could perform, tasks that required the manipulation of the unseen forces of the world. At the center of this grand assembly stood King Solomon himself, resplendent in his royal robes, which shimmered like liquid gold in the morning light. His presence commanded respect and reverence, not just from his human subjects, but from every living creature that served under his rule. His crown, adorned with jewels that sparkled like the stars, was a symbol of the divine favor bestowed upon him. Yet despite the magnificence of his appearance, there was a sense of humility in his demeanor, a reminder of his deep connection with Allah and the wisdom that guided his every decision. As he mounted his majestic steed, a horse as powerful as it was graceful, Solomon surveyed the vast army before him. His eyes, sharp and discerning, took in every detail. The soldiers standing in perfect rows, their armor gleaming, the horses restless with anticipation, the birds circling above, their sharp eyes scanning the terrain. And then there were the jinn, unseen but felt, their presence adding an air of mystery and power to the assembly. The king's gaze swept over his commanders, men of valor and experience, each one chosen for their loyalty and skill. They stood at attention, awaiting their orders, their faces a mixture of determination and pride. They knew the significance of the task ahead, and they were ready to follow their king to the ends of the earth if need be. Solomon raised his hand, and a hush fell over the camp. The only sounds were the rustling of the wind through the trees and the distant calls of birds. Even the jinn seemed to hold their breath, waiting for their master to speak. "Today we embark on a journey," Solomon began, his voice carrying with a strength that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath them. "A journey that will test our strength, our resolve, and our faith. We march not for conquest or glory, but for a purpose higher than any earthly ambition. We march in the name of Allah to fulfill the mission that has been entrusted to us." His words were met with a murmur of assent, a wave of energy passing through the ranks as the soldiers straightened their backs, their resolve hardening. "Remember," Solomon continued, "that our strength does not lie in our numbers, nor in the power of our weapons. It lies in our unity, our faith, and the wisdom that guides our every step. We are not just an army, we are a force of divine purpose. And as we march, let us do so with humility, knowing that we are but servants of Allah's will." With these words, Solomon signaled the beginning of the march. The ground trembled as the vast army began to move, the synchronized steps of thousands of soldiers creating a rhythm that echoed through the valleys. The birds flew ahead, their eyes sharp and watchful, while the jinn moved silently alongside the humans, their presence felt but not seen. As they marched, Solomon's thoughts turned inward. He was acutely aware of the responsibility that weighed upon him, not just as a king but as a prophet of Allah. The mission ahead was fraught with challenges, both seen and unseen. Yet he knew that with wisdom and faith, they would overcome whatever lay in their path. Unbeknownst to Solomon and his army, however, their journey would soon bring them face to face with a small, seemingly insignificant creature. A creature that would remind the great king of a lesson he knew well, but that even the wisest of men must occasionally be reminded of. For even the smallest of Allah's creations holds wisdom and value, and it is the duty of the wise to recognize and respect it. And so, with the sun now fully risen, casting its golden light over the marching army, King Solomon led his forces onward, unaware of the encounter that would soon make this day one of the most memorable in his reign. The gathering of his army was but the beginning of a story that would be told and retold for generations, a story of wisdom, humility, and the unexpected lessons that life, in all its complexity, has to offer. The world of the ants. Beneath the feet of Solomon's mighty army lay a hidden world, teeming with life and purpose, the world of the ants. In this underground realm, a bustling colony thrived, with each ant playing its role in the complex society. The queen ant, safely nestled in her chamber, was the heart of this tiny empire, while the worker ants toiled to gather food and maintain the tunnels, and the soldier ants stood vigilant, guarding against threats. The leader of the ants, an experienced and wise figure, oversaw the colony's operations. This leader, though small, was attuned to the subtle vibrations of the earth. On this particular day, the ground trembled with a new and unfamiliar intensity, a warning of danger above. Sensing the imminent threat, the leader quickly issued an urgent call. "O ants, enter your dwellings, lest Solomon and his armies crush you while they are unaware." The ants responded swiftly, retreating into the safety of their tunnels. The leader stayed above ground just long enough to ensure that all had taken cover before descending into the depths. As the vibrations grew stronger, the leader could only wonder what immense force had come to their land. Unbeknownst to the ants, their cries had reached the ears of King Solomon, who, in his wisdom, halted his mighty army to spare the tiny creatures below. This act of compassion would be remembered in the colony for generations, a reminder that even the smallest of beings can be heard and protected by the wise. The ants' plea. As Solomon's grand army marched forward, the earth trembled under the weight of countless soldiers, horses, and the invisible jinn that accompanied them. The noise and vibration reached deep into the ground, disturbing the normally peaceful world of the ants. The leader of the ant colony, wise and vigilant, sensed the impending danger. The vibrations grew stronger, the tremors threatening to collapse their intricate tunnels. The leader knew that the colony was in grave danger. If the army continued its march, the ants would be crushed beneath the giant feet of Solomon's soldiers. Without hesitation, the leader rushed to the surface and called out to the colony, its tiny voice filled with urgency. "O ants, enter your dwellings," it cried, "lest Solomon and his armies crush you while they are unaware." The plea was carried through the colony, a desperate call to action. The ants, disciplined and quick, responded immediately. Workers abandoned their tasks, soldiers retreated from their posts, and all hurried back to the safety of the underground chambers. The leader watched as the last of its fellow ants disappeared into the tunnels, its heart pounding with concern. The leader knew that the humans above were unaware of the tiny world beneath their feet. To them, the ants were invisible, insignificant, Yet the leader also knew that their lives mattered. They were part of Allah's creation, and their survival was worth fighting for. As the leader retreated into the colony, it prayed that its plea would be heard. Unbeknownst to the ant, its words had reached the ears of the one being who could command the entire army to stop, King Solomon. The great king, blessed with the ability to understand the language of animals, heard the ant's plea and smiled at the wisdom of the small creature. With a gentle command, Solomon ordered his army to halt, sparing the ants from certain destruction. The king, moved by the ant's concern for its people, thanked Allah for the reminder that even the smallest creatures have wisdom and worth. And so, the ants were saved, their world spared by the compassion of a mighty king who listened to the plea of a humble ant. This act of mercy would become a legend among the ants, a story of survival and the unexpected power of a single voice raised in defense of its people. Solomon's reflection. As the mighty army of King Solomon came to an abrupt halt, the great king dismounted from his horse, his mind lingering on the small yet profound encounter that had just transpired. He had heard the plea of a creature so small that it could easily go unnoticed by the eyes of men, yet its voice had reached his ears, filled with wisdom and concern. King Solomon walked a few steps away from his army, his gaze fixed on the ground where the tiny ants had scurried back to their dwellings. He marveled at the intricate world hidden beneath the surface, a world teeming with life, purpose, and a delicate balance that could be disrupted by the slightest misstep of a giant. As he stood there, a sense of deep humility washed over him. Solomon, who commanded the winds, spoke with the birds, and ruled over both men and jinn, was reminded of the vastness of Allah's creation. In the grand tapestry of life, even the smallest thread held significance, and no creature was too insignificant to be heard or valued. He reflected on the power and wisdom that had been entrusted to him by Allah. With great power came great responsibility, not just over his people and the vast armies under his command, but over all creatures, no matter how small. The plea of the ant had reminded him that true leadership was not about dominance or might, but about compassion, understanding, and the ability to listen. Solomon's heart swelled with gratitude as he looked toward the heavens. He offered a silent prayer, thanking Allah for the wisdom that had allowed him to hear the ant's plea and the humility to act upon it. He recognized that this moment was a divine reminder that even the greatest of kings must always remain humble, aware of the responsibility that comes with their power, and ever mindful of the lives that depend on their decisions. As he returned to his army, Solomon's resolve was strengthened. He knew that his kingdom was not just a realm of men, but a part of a much larger creation, where every being played a role in Allah's grand design. He mounted his horse with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to lead his army forward, not just with strength, but with wisdom and compassion. Conclusion. The encounter between King Solomon and the ant is a powerful lesson in humility and compassion. Despite his immense power, Solomon was reminded by the tiny ant that true greatness lies in listening and acting with mercy. The ant's plea, though from a small creature, highlighted the value of every life in Allah's creation and the responsibility that comes with leadership. This story teaches us that no being is too insignificant to be respected, and that wisdom often comes from unexpected places. It reminds us of the interconnectedness of all life and the importance of leading with kindness and understanding. Solomon's response to the ant's plea is a timeless example of how true power is measured by our ability to value and protect all forms of life, no matter how small. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. If you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more content celebrating the Islamic heritage. Your support really helps spread these important stories and teachings. We hope that Allah brings peace, happiness, and success to you and your family.